And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again on a slightly different show tonight. I wrote a piece in the Gateway Pundit 2 days ago, and it was an overview of the legal case that I have been involved in pulling together. And tonight, I'm going to bring on, as pre records, I spoke to Lord Pearson of Rannoch earlier. You'll hear his input in the case. I spoke to Liz, obviously the person at the center of the case, the very brave survivor who I've got to know over the last 5 years, and Robin Tilbrook, who has been a guest on numerous times. And he, of course, is the legal mastermind, the person who has spearheaded this in terms of the legal side. So I want to touch on all three of those different angles to this case. And this is quite a key case because I think it's a blueprint for for hundreds of other cases, really, hundreds of other cases across the UK, to go after these rapists, not only to give these girls financial justice, but to bankrupt the perpetrators. We have had well over 500 individuals charged, sentenced, and locked away for these crimes. And this is the first of its kind in terms of getting financial justice for these girls. But I want to just touch on this. Obviously, it's a stain on British history, and it is something that has been brushed under the carpet for many, many years. Let me bring up, this is the front of the article. First, private prosecution of a grooming gang rapist, a blueprint for justice. And then I talk about obviously the situation in the UK, and then how Sikh girls were actually protected. The crazy part of this is that you have the white English communities have by and large not stood up for these girls, but yet in the Sikh communities they set up these vigilante groups that actually would look after these girls. We didn't do that in the English communities. Um, been ignored for decades. First reported in 1975 in the Rotherham Advertiser, and then later on, Julie Bindell wrote in, I think it was the Sunday Times, and then of course Andrew Norfolk in 2012 on the front page of the Times, and his front page story blew this up and made it into a story that the British public were aware of. Over 500 prosecutions, 500 individuals sentenced to this in over 75 trials in over 40 towns across the UK. And the head of one of the police, I think it was Northampton, said that this is happening in every town across the UK, except of course London, because Sadiq Khan tells us that actually it's not happening in London. Make of that what you will. Maybe London is the perfect city in the world. I don't think so. I think it's been brushed under the carpet there also. So we've had these all across the country, and I want to touch on this legal case, and the link to this article is in the description. It goes back to 2020, whenever Alan Craig, my co-founder at Hearts of Oak, and Baroness Cox, who along with Lord Pearson has been the most vocal person in terms of critiquing Islam and standing up for those who are oppressed under that, especially women. They went to visit Liz in Rotherham, heard her story, and were not that heard this story before, but again, also when you meet someone face to face and hear it, it's raw. Um, and they came away wanting to assist in setting up a legal process so she could get financial justice for that. Justice, I don't know how you get justice in terms of this issue, but so we talked to her. Alan and the Baroness came back from visiting her in Rotherham. I chatted to them both. Immediately, I talked to Lord Pearson. And within days, Lord Pearson had pulled together the money to start this legal case. Without the money, it would have remained just an idea, a vision, a hope. So we started that. That was in August 2020. The money came together beginning of September 2020. And then we reached out to Robin Tilbrook. We had all known Robin, and Robin also had been trying to start such a case before. So we engaged with Robin, pulled together a conversation, and after that conversation, we realized this was possible. We had the funding, we had the girl, the survivor, and we had now the legal ability to move ahead with this. So that was everything. Then in October 2020, we're kind of started this. We think this is all good. October 2020, Liz learned that Ashgar Boston, her rapist, had been moved to an open prison. She hadn't even been told. Now, an open prison, this is only serving 32 months of his sentence. He was moved to an open prison. An open prison means, hey, you can go home for weekends. You can apply for that. And she was petrified. What did that mean? That he would be coming to Rotherham, harassing her? She was living in fear. And of course, the Ministry of Justice, they gave a bland apology because they didn't really give a damn. And she was just one person in many. So they offered a bland apology. And then, of course, the issue was that he was assessed as a low absconding risk. So if he wasn't going to flee and not come back to prison, but no clear evaluation on his potential to reoffend. So that was a shock to the system. We moved forward anyway. Then the next hit was the battle to get the transcripts, the battle to get the court transcripts, a 4-day transcripts off the court. And these are not publicly available unless you pay for them. And I went through the House of Lords Library, obviously being chief staff to Lord Pearson of Rannoch for the last 10 years. And the library tried to get them. Then basically came back to me and told me it was too expensive. They couldn't afford them. Now, if the House of Lords, the House of Commons Parliament, the mother of Parliament, if they cannot afford to get court transcripts, it's too expensive. How can the general public afford it? So anyway, that was a 3-month battle, and eventually we found that actually we couldn't get it, and then we had to pay directly to get that. July 2021, Robin instructed a barrister. So that was the next part of the civil claim. And then November 2021 was the first court hearing. 15th of November 2021, it was heard at the Royal Courts of Justice. And after 2.5 hours, the judge granted anonymity for Liz. He waived the 5-year limitation for personal injury claims, as this was carried out a long time ago. And he froze Boston's assets. So this was a key step forward. Then in August 2022, we find the rapist has been let out early after serving half of his 9-year sentence. No electronic monitoring. Of course, Liz is extremely concerned. And then we move on to the rest of the process. Now, I want to bring in a couple of these individuals I mentioned. Let me first play Lord Pearson's clip. He has spoken out on the grooming gangs for many years. And I was looking back in the archives, and this is one of the early 13th of March 2018. Let me play this clip of him asking the government a question on this
case.
My Lords, I fear that reply is shamefully inadequate, because these girls are usually raped several times a day. And so if we accept the views of our lead police officer for child protection, of Rotherham's MP, and of the recent Jay and Quilliam reports, we seem to be looking at millions of rapes of white and Sikh girls by Muslim men, only 222 of whom have been convicted since 2005. So, my Lords, will the government ask our Muslim leaders whether the perpetrators can claim that their behaviour is sanctioned in the Quran, and to issue a fatwa against it? And second, my Lords, will the government encourage a national debate about the various interpretations of Islam? Can we talk about Islam without being accused of hate crime?
So that was Lord Pearson. Let me bring up another clip of him speaking a few months later, and obviously this gives you a flavour of Lord Pearson and his bravery in speaking up. Here is a later, I think this is in October 2018, similar line of questioning for the government, and you see the government's flippant response.
But accept that if we extrapolate nationally the Jay report on Rotherham and other reports on Telford and Oxford, There appear to have been upwards of 250,000 young white girls raped in this century, very largely by Muslim men. And given these girls are usually raped several times a day for years, so, my lords, what is the government's answer to the Chief Constable of Northumberland, of Northumbria, who has just said that there is every likelihood that these grooming gangs are operating in every one of our major cities? So, my lords, what is the government doing to prosecute those in authority who turned a blind eye to all this because they were afraid of being Islamophobic and so on? And what is it doing to compensate and help these victims mentally?
My lords, I really refute the fact that the government is turning a blind eye to those in authority. Sorry, that those in authority are turning a blind eye to this. Noble lords from across the House have outlined the various child sexual abuse perpetrations in various parts of the country. And my lords, one thing we can say above all else is what these people target is vulnerability. It's not specific to race, creed, or colour. It's vulnerability.
Well, there was Lord Pearson asking the government a question. Here is Lord Pearson. And Lord Pearson, it's wonderful to have you with us on this video talking about this legal case that you've been involved in. So I appreciate your time today.
Not at all.
So, Lord Pearson, you've spoken up about the grooming gang scandal for many years. I think and we played a little clip before I brought you in on the 18th of March 2018. That might have been the first oral question on the grooming gangs, but you've talked about Islam prior to that. Maybe let us know why you wanted to speak about that, and did you receive support or opposition from fellow members of the House of Lords?
Oh, no, I mean, they didn't want to go near it. And particularly the House of Commons didn't want to touch it because already by then, a number of MPs had a very influential Muslim vote in their constituencies. And so they didn't want to do anything to offend the Muslims. And I think my first debate, actually, was in December 17. And even that I described as yet another attempt to open up a conversation about Islam, about the nature of Islam, and to learn about it and, think where it might be going and where it might take us. And of course it was. It was very unpopular, particularly, of course, with the Liberal Democrats. But I'm afraid I enjoy being disliked by Liberal Democrats. I think it's rather fun.
I saw sometimes you'd ask questions and there was such a noise of anger, I think, in the House with, you could feel the tension rising. What's that like for you, one person against the whole House of Lords? It's quite intimidating. I certainly felt intimidated, and I was sitting in the balcony for some of those times.
Well, it doesn't worry me. Providing you're confident that what you're doing is right, and in a way good, because all I was saying then is, can we talk about Islam? Can we come to terms with it without being accused immediately of Islamophobia? The Muslims have invented this brilliant word, Islamophobia. They use it against anyone who tries to discuss it at all. And has been set up, and I think it's very worrying. There is, I think it's called the Anti-Muslim Hatred and Islamophobia Working Group, which the government is setting up, and I think it's going to ask them to produce, an official definition of Islamophobia, which I think they may be done. There's a large chunk in the Home Office, a sort of Muslim cabal in the Home Office, which are going to try to make it into a criminal offence, and that would be very serious indeed.
Yeah, Well, certainly
Why
watch.
do we only have a working group on Islam? Thank you very much. I mean, what about Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, atheists? I don't know. So there is, I'm afraid, a very unhealthy Muslim element at work in the Home Office and elsewhere.
No, there is.
And I mean, to be a good Muslim, you have to obey. You have to do two things. You have to obey the Quran and emulate the life of Muhammad. And this is really unfortunate because the Quran contains, I think, over 100 verses. I think 104 verses, which encourage non-Muslims or Muslims to kill or subdue non-Muslims. And Muhammad ordered the death of 600 Jews in one afternoon. So, those verses in the Quran make it impossible for Islam to be a religion of peace, which is what they like to call it.
No, exactly. Those sword verses. We've had Jay Smith on before.
There's a very good website on that called The Religion of Peace, which is well worth a look. It's very underused, but it's very factual and good. Yeah.
And that was blocked for a time in the House of Lords. But that's
yes.
a whole.
I think it still is. I think it's still blocked on the parliamentary estate. I think it may be.
I think so. But can I ask you about this case with Liz? It was summer of 2020 whenever Alan Craig and Baroness Cox had been to see this girl who's a grooming gang survivor, and she had a desire to sue her rapist. Obviously, the Baroness and you are very good friends and have been allies in speaking up on the clash that we have with Islam and our freedoms in the West. But obviously, money was needed, and within days, you were able to pull the money together for that case. Let's know a little bit about that. Why did you think this case should go ahead?
Well, I thought it would be an example of what might be done by others. And therefore, I think it was a sort of first case of its kind. And I was very fortunate in having friends who were happy to put up the money with that in mind. And I think I contributed too, probably. But, so we saw that, as an example, which with any luck other girls would follow.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that we were going to get so bogged down in a sort of, the niceties of getting household him and all that sort of thing. But we anyway, that's what we did, yeah.
Of course, it's been, as you mentioned, it's been longer than we have thought. Robin Tilbrook has done a great job as a solicitor, as the legal brain. But we're nearing the end of this case with Liz. We're waiting now for an enforcement order. Obviously, we had the award of 450,000, but you need the enforcement order to get the house. It's taken a long time, 5 years. I think maybe all been a bit surprised at how long it's taken.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I don't really understand, but the law can grind awfully slowly, I'm afraid, in this country. The law is the true embodiment of everything that's excellent. But I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But yeah, I mean, the whole process is disgraceful, really.
And I mean, this case is about Liz, the survivor, having financial compensation to sue her rapist, and never been done before. And you said it should be the first of many. There should be hundreds of these because up to 1 million girls have been affected. But I guess there also needs. This is about the girls getting justice, but there's another side which is. You've talked about this, the failures of the authorities, and you've a number of oral questions about this, and it's always batted away. And you're told, the authorities do their best, but yet I think there also needs to be legal cases against those who have turned a blind eye on authority.
Well, there should be. The social workers and the police, in these cases, have behaved, I would have thought criminally, really. But quite how one gets one's act together to sue them at law, make sure that they're punished, is not an easy one, I don't think. I don't know where we've got with that at the moment.
No, I think we're waiting for us to have the last hearing to get the enforcement order, and then when
Yes,
that is done, then maybe that will open the doors to going after the authorities. Um,
yes,
but there's also this other, I think you've been maybe maligned and criticized because of this distinction of what you call grooming gangs or these rape gangs. The press really have talked about it as Asian grooming gangs. They've now made a step, actually, this is Pakistani grooming gangs.
yes,
But you've always wanted to correct that and say, actually, this is a religious issue. This is
yes,
Muslim grooming
yes, yes.
gangs and not cultural.
No, the problem is religious, and it's Islamism. The problem comes from within Islam. It doesn't come from. To talk about Pakistani grooming gangs is very offensive to all the Pakistanis, the Christians, the Sikhs, the Buddhists, and all the rest of it, and indeed the atheists. And therefore, I've been sort of making a fuss and saying, will you please stop talking about Pakistani grooming gangs, or indeed Asian. What they are is Muslim grooming gangs. That's what inspires these awful people. As I say, the problem is religious, and it's from within Islam. It's Islamism, radical Islam. It is not ethnic, and I think anyone's got to say that and get people to see it.
No, absolutely. Do you think it's easier to talk about this? I mean, you've been a member of the House of Lords, one of Margaret Thatcher's last appointees back in 1990s. You've been there 35 years. You were unpopular speaking up against Europe. Yeah,
Mm.
and everything you said was true and has come to pass and has been proved to be correct. You've been unpopular because of your discussions and comments about Islam, wanting to talk about Islam. Is it any easier, do you think, to talk about this issue in the country now than it was whenever you first started, maybe over 10 years ago?
I don't know. There are a lot of, I'm afraid, peers over the years who've said, we're right with you on this one, we're right behind you. And to which I've feel as though you're an awful long way behind. And I don't know, but I think the grooming gang thing, which is Islamist, it's radical Islam, should open up, the debate. But I don't know whether it really will. I was thinking of trying to have a debate in the Lords, maybe before Christmas. I don't know. Simply, setting out the basis of Islam and Islamism in the United Kingdom and beyond, now and going into the future. But I don't know whether I have to ballot for it and that sort of thing. I don't know whether I'll be successful in the ballot.
I can't
And
I can't imagine it'd be very popular. But just my last question to you before I let you go is
mm,
you and the Baroness Cox have been leading. She has spoken up bravely about Muslim women and how they're treated and
yeah,
the lack of freedom they have. The All Party Parliamentary Group on Honour-Based Abuse. She was heading that up. You
yeah.
both had Garrett Fielders to the Lords, and that was a wonderful occasion, causing chaos. But you've been willing to have these conversations. Are there others in the chamber that have maybe come in more recently that are willing to speak on this and kind of take the baton from what you and Baroness Cox have been doing?
I don't know. I don't know. I hope so. But I can't. I'm not aware of anyone at the moment. But we'll. Um, maybe Lord Young, who's a newish peer, is a very, very good man. Maybe he and I don't know. There may be others, but I just don't know at the moment. I'm afraid it's disappointing.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But Lord Pearce, thank you. I know without your desire to see this case happen, without your fundraising, bringing together those donors and yourself, it wouldn't have happened. It would have remained a wish and a dream. So certainly I know that Liz has thanked you many times over, but thank you for giving us your time and discussing.
Well, I mean, as long as it's used to get more of them, you see what I mean? To get more cases like this, because I mean, there are a hell of a lot of girl victims of the grooming gang things, and we really got to get at the authorities, the police, the social workers, and everything, who just turned a blind eye.
No, we do. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Thanks. Bye.
Well, that was Lord Pearson, fearless. Let me pick up on some other parts of the case. As soon as we got the fee exemption, these survivors have to pay £10,000 if they want to access the legal system, despite their perpetrator already serving time, because the English judicial system has said they're guilty. So we had to wait for that to be waived. That was waived, and then immediately the claim was submitted. Now, in March 2023, so it took 14. So January 2023, the claim was submitted. Actually, within 2 months, it was very quick. We had an award, and the award was £425,000. The judge awarded that Liz was due because of personal damages. So that was the award, and that was later up to 450,000. And then we had to go through further processes. The further process was a charging order. So we would basically be able to take his assets and get that money. It's all well and good the judge awarding an amount of money, but where does that money come from? It comes from the perpetrator. So we had to work on that. That was the next step. But let me bring in Liz and let her personally share a little bit about her story. And Liz, it's wonderful to have you with us talking about this case that you're at the center of, and you've bravely pushed this through. But so thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for asking.
Not at all. Always good. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you, Liz, over this sometimes long 5 years, from back in the day when I think Baroness Cox and Alan Craig had met with you just over 5 years ago. And from that meeting, many things happened, including Lord Pearson raising the money for the legal side, Robin Tilbrook being the legal person to push it forward. But maybe just your thoughts. It's been a long road, but we are at the final hurdle. I think it's right to say, waiting for this enforcement action. It's certainly been ups and downs. Liz, do you want to give us your thoughts on all of this, and of course your bravery in actually going through this legal case?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long journey, from start to what we can now call nearly the finish line. Um, you know, the early days I actually thought we wouldn't be able to pull it off, you know, um, because justice doesn't work for victims usually. Um, and when I was awarded what I was awarded, I was like, oh my God, I still can't believe it to this day that actually something went in favour of a grooming gang victim. Um, and it's had its highs and it's had its lows, just like everything really. But the main thing is we kind of opened that floodgate.
And tell me about the day when that award came through, 425,000. Um, I mean, I can imagine you just being shocked in disbelief whenever you read all the reports, and it was covered by every media outlet in the UK. Yeah, what were your thoughts when that good news came through?
I couldn't believe it, I rang Robin twice to say, "Are you sure that you've got that right?" You know, because from going from not being believed to getting justice through the judicial process, then to be able to seize his assets and be awarded that amount, it was absolutely, I can't even describe in words, but I was very proud of all of us for that, because you have to go and look for your own justice. Justice is denied, doors are slammed in us faces because people don't want to have that conversation around grooming grooming gangs and grooming gang victims. And for me to go into court and to be believed again, it was really overwhelming.
And you've been a fearless campaigner on this because it's obviously so personal, has affected you. But you've met interesting people along the way. I think you had met with different politicians. I mean, Lord Pearson, of course, is a maverick and is always fun and doesn't care what people think. But you've also travelled and sat with other politicians and I guess journalists. I mean, what has that been like? Talking to people and realizing that actually your story is being believed by those in the political circles and media.
I never thought it would get to that point, and one of there's been one person, um, especially in the last couple of years, 3, 4 years, um, that's absolutely gone over and beyond for me, and that's Charlie Peters from GB News. Absolutely amazing. You know, all of GB News has always helped and tried to cover this subject to the highest level possible. I have sat with politicians and I've sat with them from every political party, but we haven't seen much progress.
No, we haven't. And this being slow, I mean, there's an inquiry supposedly happening, and there have been many other kind of small inquiries that haven't really done anything. What are your, because you obviously, there are many parts. One is, and I will be delighted. I'll be over the moon on the day whenever we sell the property, and you get the money for that. It's going to be a great day. It's one thing the judge awarding the money, but then of course you have to get the money. But the whole process is, I guess we know a lot more now than we did at the beginning. That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking. And if what we've done is a blueprint for others, you get financial justice compensation, and then it's a blueprint for others to follow. So without you deciding to put yourself in this and make it happen, it wouldn't have shown others that actually this is possible.
absolutely. And I just want to make it known that this isn't about money at all. This is about justice. This is about opening those floodgates and setting that scene that if you abuse children, we're coming for you, regardless if the police do their jobs or not. It's a matter of trying to say, look, and use it as a deterrent that if you abuse children, this is what could happen to you as well.
Yeah, it should be a deterrent and bankrupt many perpetrators as well. What I guess the whole process is this now an issue, a topic that others are maybe more willing to engage with and talk about, or do you still think it's a topic that's difficult to actually get out in the public area?
It's still as difficult as when the J report came out. You get low. The only difference is these days is that the public's eyes are open. You know, the public wasn't privy to this information. They didn't know the true extent of what had happened to us, how we were failed on um, a big systemic scale. Um, but yeah, it's still a topic that people are wanting to close down.
No, they are. And my final thought is about this is something wide. What you've done, you blazed a trail in terms of going after the perpetrator and suing them. And you're right. This is to me, it's about you getting financial compensation. It is about actually damaging and destroying the perpetrators, as about providing a path. But there's also those, I guess, who have failed in the different institutions, in child services or the police, local politicians. It seems as though many have willfully chosen not to actually see justice done. And I guess we need to see a legal process in terms of that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You know, before a way of preventing this ever again is to make sure that the officers historically and council workers are made accountable, so it's not a repetitive pattern, because all that's going to be done is that it's going to create more victims. Accountability is a must.
It is. And I think what you've done, and sticking through this long process, means you give others hope, and they're able to do this. But, and of course, people, your hashtag is there at Snatch 1400. Make sure, and the viewers and listeners are following you. And by doing that, they help raise your profile and amplify your voice. And I think that's what the public can do. And obviously, your book is there. Everything is there to make sure and support you in any way the public can. But Liz, thank you so much for giving us your time. Just a few thoughts on this as we wait for that final hearing to actually take possession of the house. So thank you for giving us your time today.
Thank you.
Well, that was Liz, a fearless individual, someone I've got to know over the last 5 years. And I am in awe of her courage of actually speaking up, being an activist, and going through despite what she has suffered. And she's turned around what was meant for evil against her, and she's turned it to something positive. And she is an example to all of us to turn adversity into something positive. Now, let me touch on some of the other areas, and then I'll bring in Robin Tilbrook, who's been the legal mastermind, actually, the person who spearheaded this. And without, we wouldn't have been able to move forward. We needed a individual, a survivor. We needed the money, and we needed the legal expertise. And Robin, I will bring him in a moment, brought the legal expertise. But so we got this final charging order. This was the end of 2023. And then January 2024, we find out another breaking story that caused shockwaves for us. And that was that Boston, her rapist, had been spotted a mile away from her home. Of course, no electronic monitoring, so very difficult to find. That had to be proved he was there. And then he was recalled to prison and now will serve the rest of his sentence until the end of 2027. So there's a little bit of justice in that. We then went for an order of sale. So with the final fee exemption secured, yes, we had to ask for a second one, because at every point you pay more and more money. So we got the second fee exemption, and Robin Tilbrook issued an order to sell Boston's property, and that advanced the compensation process. So we are now in the middle of waiting. That was October 2024. We're now September 2025. And we are waiting for that to happen, for us to be given a court date for an enforcement order for us to go and sell the property. So anybody in estate agents out there, if you want to be part of selling this property and returning that money to Elizabeth, do let us know. But the heroes in this long fight, I mentioned Lord Pearson. Baroness Cox has been a hero. She was secretary of the All Party Parliamentary Group on Honour-Based Abuse, and has been fearless in her standing up for those girls and women within Islam who have very few rights. Liz, of course, is a hero, and Robin Tilbrook also. So let's hear from Robin Tilbrook on the legal side. Robin Tilbrook, it's great to have you with us. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Nice to be here.
Good to be. And you, obviously, we want to touch on the case, the Liz case that actually has been over a number of years, and you have been the legal instrument to push this forward. Maybe go back to 5 years ago, whenever those initial conversations were happening. Um, what made you, as a solicitor, think this is something that I want to get involved in?
Yes, Peter. So I've been trying to get in contact with a victim that wanted to bring a case since not long after the J report was first issued back in what was it, 2014. I did try and place an advertisement in the Rotherham Advertiser to take on cases to sue perpetrators. Very interestingly, however, and I think, shall we say, suspiciously, the Rotherham Advertiser wouldn't take the advert. So I was advertising as a solicitor to do what's in effect, as far as the law is concerned, a personal injury claim.
Yeah.
And therefore, in principle, not different for the advert to doing an advert to deal with road traffic accidents, but they wouldn't take it. So, I mean, I think that is part of the problem that we've seen with the child rape gangs and the way they've operated. That it isn't just the police, the social workers, the councils, local politicians. It's also the media that have been complicit.
No,
and
it is
kept
across
quiet about it when they well knew what was going on.
No, it is across the board. But I mean, where we are now, looking back at having a successful award from the judge and now waiting to seek the enforcement side of that. Looking back, I mean, it's many of us, many of the viewers and listeners will be scratching their heads thinking, how has this not been done before? We've had many cases, legal cases, of these individuals being sentenced for their crimes. And yet there has never been a case like what we have managed to put together and you have spearheaded in terms of getting compensation, suing the perpetrator. I mean, why has this not been normal and part of what's been happening over the last number of decades?
It's extraordinary. It really is, and it does demand. But I mean, personally, I live in Essex, which is obviously a long way away from Rotherham, where Liz was groomed and raped. I understand, because after the news about the Liz case broke, I was contacted by some other victims who were seeing whether it was going to be possible to do a case for them, and they told me that local solicitors had advised them that they couldn't sue the perpetrators. Now, that is completely wrong. That is not the law. That isn't so much negligence as I think it's sort of gross negligence, because it's a false advice. But I suspect that is another part of the establishment, as it were, that's got co-opted into dealing and colluding with these gangs, and I suppose the fact is that they no doubt went into buying houses, doing things that would have involved local solicitors working for them. But the truth is that it has long been part of English common law for many centuries that you can sue people who commit crimes against you for damages, and so it's not a new concept. And I agree with you. I just thought it was extremely odd that that actions were not being taken. The easy actions were being taken. The negligence action against the police and the negligence action against the council and the social workers. Those cases were being taken, but of course they are inevitably relatively small amounts, because it is only the damage caused by the negligence rather than the damage caused by the actual criminals. What I was trying to demonstrate was that if you've got a convicted perpetrator, convicted of rapes in our case, against the victim, and the victim's willing to bring a case, and the perpetrator, it's almost I'd say a no-brainer that you could bring a case and you're going to win it. The perpetrator is not allowed in law to argue that they didn't do it when they've been convicted, and also the law doesn't apply the usual rule on limitation, which would be 6 years, because the fact is there's been a conviction. So the 6-year rule is about whether or not there's going to be prejudice to the defendant in being able to prove that they haven't done whatever is being alleged. But if they've been convicted, that rule simply doesn't apply.
And of course,
it's worth pointing out that
you knew these, which was
I was going to say
the key. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's long established principle. Leading case on the limitation point that I was making case from 30 or 40 years ago, saying that basically where there's been a conviction for a rape, as that case was as well, then in that case the perpetrator inherited some money, I think it was, and 20 plus years after the rape, she sued him, and the House of Lords was crystal clear that in those situations the case can go ahead because there's no prejudice to the defendant in being able to prove that he didn't do it, because he's not going to be allowed to prove that because he's been convicted.
Can I ask you about moving forward, because we're near the end of this, we believe so. We've had the award, but Liz has not received money as yet. That's where we are now. But tell us, for us non-legal folk, the judge has made a ruling that that's the first time that this has happened in terms of grooming gangs, in terms of survivors suing their perpetrators. Does that then make it easier? Because now I think whenever we are going through the process, there was maybe some confusion from those maybe in the courts because this hadn't been done before. Now it has been done and there's been an award. Does that then set a precedent going forward, or does each case have to be fought purely on its own merits?
Basically, it has to be on its own merits. There was a long-standing, as I say, rule that, in effect, somebody in Liz's situation could bring a claim. So we haven't established any sort of new legal rules, and I think it's fair to say we have experienced the law's delay, as Hamlet puts it in the Shakespearean play. And the fact is that the courts, the administration of the courts, is in a bad way. And one of the delays we had was it 8 months, 9 months, something like that, in processing a simple application for a fee exemption, because the fees are large. That the courts take, thanks to the Conservative administration that whacked up the court fees by over 400%. So we're now at a point where to issue a claim of the size that you are going to issue if you're suing one of these perpetrators, there's a court fee of £10,000, is and that's just to issue the paperwork. They don't do anything more than create a file for £10,000. So it's sort of a tax, basically, isn't it, rather than a service fee. And the administration of the court system was also completely undermined during the period of Conservative misrule. And we've now got a system that is slow. That a lot of the people you deal with don't really understand what their job is or what they're supposed to be doing, and they've been appointed for multiculturalist, tokenist reasons, rather than because they're aiming to be good at the job, which is all adds to the general hassle, and the system itself, in any case, is quite clunky. So, bringing these type of cases, you're inevitably going to want to be in the High Court. This thing we did in the Liz case was we got she's known as Liz in the case, and we got a freezing order, which basically meant that the perpetrator, Ashgar Boston, wouldn't be able to get his assets back to Pakistan. And since we've got the judgment, we've also got a charging order. So although we are stuck in the very slow-moving system, moving towards getting the property sold at auction, probably, we do at least have the reassurance that it's not going to be removed from our reach. So, I mean, it will eventually produce the full amount of the perpetrators' assets in this country. We don't know for sure how much that's going to be, but it will have been worth doing in terms of the finances, and I think Liz has also found it worth doing in terms of her view of not only the system but also of what happened to her. It's re-empowered her a bit, I think, which is an important development as far as she's concerned, and I think helps to justify what we've done. That we are helping to put, or to give a sense of some justice to somebody who has been so badly wronged.
Yeah, no, exactly. Rob, my last thought for you is certainly as I've been going through this process, and I'm now much more aware of the legal side than it was in the beginning. But through this process, I think my desire has been that we would end up with a successful award, and then that would basically be a blueprint for others to follow, other legal minds, other solicitors. But I know that you've also been keen yourself to move ahead with this, because we've all learned a lot and better equipped, I think, today to have other cases than maybe we were at the beginning. Give us your thoughts on others taking this up and the work that you've wanted to do in actually other cases.
Yeah, so my aim in doing the case was basically to be a sort of, want a better term, pathfinder or icebreaker, so that others could see, it was actually fairly straightforward to do it in principle. You've got all the bureaucratic hassles, but you've got that with every case. So litigators ought to be able to see quite easily that there are cases here, and one of the facts is, of course, that a lot of the perpetrators do have, in some cases, considerable assets, because they were making a lot of money out of prostituting the girls. So it is something that ought, in principle, to be able to be done to lots of the perpetrators. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how many perpetrators have now been convicted, but I have a feeling it's something like 700 or 800. So most of those are probably own assets, and their victims could sue to take those assets off them. And I think that would be of value, not only in terms of the victim getting compensation and impact on their mental idea of the way that they've been treated, and helpful to mental health, but also it would be a deterrent for the future, because perpetrators would then not be thinking that they are going to make any money out of it. At the moment, they're comfortable in thinking that they've been protected for decades, but then they've also got assets, and they've got status and standing within their communities because of their assets. So I think there's quite a lot of good reasons why we ought to be looking at trying to take that away from them.
No, absolutely. Robin, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an interesting journey with you, and without your legal understanding, and without your desire to see justice for Liz, this would never have happened. So certainly all credit to you for all the hard work you have done in terms of getting us to the last hurdle that we're at now. So thanks for giving us your time and sharing it.
Thank you, Peter.
That was Robin giving the legal side. And at the end of the article, I have a call to action. And let me just read this, because this is where we are and this is where we want to be. Liz's case is a blueprint. Secure funding, assemble a legal team, obtain transcripts, seek anonymity and fee waivers, freeze assets, and pursue damages through charging orders and property sales. Those are the steps that we've done over the last 5 years. And I would urge survivors to follow this path and call on donors to fund 100 more cases. And Liz's victory proves that justice is possible. Thank you for your support. Here at Hearts of Oak, thank you for your support. I worked with Liz for 5 years with pro bono, no payment, as did Robin. And he did not make money from this, and he's done this because he believes that actually these girls need to have financial justice. So do spread this far and wide. The Gateway Pundit article is in the link. Do share it, and we want as many to see this as possible as a blueprint for future legal action. Thank you.